it over to Marissa so she can give you a little bit of housekeeping on navigating Zoom in case this might be your first time or you just need a little reminder. Marissa?
Okay, so let me, oh, 1 second. So if you are new to Zoom, we have a couple housekeeping for you. So if you can't hear or you can't, when we allow people to talk, just make sure that this headphones aren't showing, because that just means that you need to connect your audio. If you are talking and we're all pointing to our ears saying we can't hear you, make sure that that slash mark isn't in between, crossing out that microphone, because that just means you're on mute. To unmute yourself, all you'll do is click the microphone, and then after the presentation, as long as it's okay to ask questions, go ahead and make sure that the microphone is clear. That'll tell you whether you're talking or not. And then throughout the session, you can chat, and there's a little chat box down here. If you go ahead and click it, and you'll be able to talk to others without disrupting the presentation. And then also, if you don't want to be recorded, because this is being recorded right now, just make sure that there's a slash mark through that camcorder. Okay, and I'm going to turn it to Gaby.
Okay, if we can highlight our speaker today, I am really excited to introduce to you Gaby Becerra. I've actually known Gaby for several years. I worked alongside Gaby. She is a wonderful therapist. She was actually the most sought after therapist in the organization that we worked with. She was always very, very busy, and she really had a way of resonating with the clients that she served. So just a minute about Gaby. She's a bilingual licensed mental health therapist who's received her master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from the University of Phoenix. After taking a psychology class her sophomore year in high school is really where Gaby found that career path. For the past 7 years, Gaby has worked with people who live with mood disorders, anxiety, substance use disorders, psychosis, grief, and trauma. She moved to Phoenix in 2018 with her fiance and her 9-year-old son, who is super adorable, by the way. And she moved from Yuma. And in her spare time, she enjoys exploring the city and spending time with family and friends. And she's passionate about helping others grow and strive to continue learning in new ways to offer support. And I can definitely agree with her passion. So Gaby, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and I really appreciate you having me and inviting me to this. This is my first webinar, so I'm really excited. I'll be talking about the impact of trauma on our ability to cope when we have difficult situations such as, COVID-19 and all the stuff we're going through as a result. I'll also be sharing some strategies that can help us work through those situations. So really excited. And again, thank you so much for having me. So let me start by telling you about my terrible first time. So I was listening to a podcast by my favorite author. Her name is Brené Brown. She writes a lot about shame and vulnerability and how to overcome shame. So she was talking about terrible first times, although she called it something different. It's FFT. So the F stands for something that I'm not gonna say right now, but it's basically terrible first time. So when Letitia invited me to do this webinar, I was really excited. And as soon as I said yes, I started to get really anxious and a little bit freaked out, thinking, oh, could I back down now? Could I say no? Because I was really anxious. It's the first time. The reason I'm sharing this right now is because with this pandemic, we're all going through a lot of first times, a lot of terrible first times. When we're having this, we experience a lot of self-doubt. We might be going through some stress. We might be feeling annoyed, really overwhelmed, and out of control. That's exactly what happened to me when I first, said yes. So I imagine a lot of us are going through that right now with the COVID-19 situation, with the pandemic. A lot of us for the first time are working from home, having to use technology for the first time. A lot of us are having to homeschool our children, you know, not being able to go outside and live our life the way we typically do. That's the first time we have to do this in this way. So at first we're feeling very, very overwhelmed, which is 100% normal. Every time we're going through a terrible first time, it's so important to acknowledge that this is happening. So we can have some perspective and start to regroup, which is exactly what happened to me too. Once I started realizing, okay, it's a terrible first time right now, I can get through it. I'm gonna be feeling a little stressed, a little overwhelmed. Then with some planning, everything got a little bit better. So again, with COVID-19, we're going through so much. There's a collective feeling of panic, uncertainty. We don't know what we're doing. We don't know what's going on. And we have been forced to also change our lives in some cases very dramatically. So anytime there is change, I think it's very important to acknowledge that anytime there's change, we experience some loss. And with any loss, there is some grief. So you might find yourself experiencing difficult emotions like fear, depression, some anger, anxiety, just yearning, missing things that you don't have anymore or that you can't do anymore. A lot of people have lost their lives. We've, lost loved ones. And this is a time of, grief. And it's okay to feel that. And it's normal. I just wanted to share that because sometimes I don't think we realize that we're going through a lot of loss in this situation, especially this is a crisis right now. And anytime we have a time of intense difficulty or trouble, and the situation surpasses our ability to cope, we're going through a crisis. So for those of us who have experienced trauma, and I want to say maybe that's all of us in different ways, trauma is a deeply disturbing or distressing experience. It can be acute trauma, which results from one single one single thing that happened to us, like a car accident that happened once, but it left us very traumatized. We can also have chronic trauma, which is repeated and prolonged, such as domestic violence, repeated abuse. It can also be complex, which results from exposure to multiple invasive and interpersonal traumatic events. It doesn't matter if it's big or small. It depends on how the person's system interprets the situation. So big or small, we have trauma, and trauma impacts our ability to cope. I was talking about the person's system because it's the autonomic nervous system that helps us, go through safety or danger, whatever we're experiencing, and it helps us cope. The way we're born, we are born wired to connect. It's something that's in our DNA, in our biology. It's something that's 100% important to do. We're wired to connect for survival, for safety, and for health. We're also wired to protect ourselves. We have everything in our bodies, everything we need to help us survive. So sometimes it involves connection, and sometimes it involves protection, So we learn to protect ourselves in the face of danger or life threats. So we do all of this with our autonomic nervous system. And this is part of the nervous system, which is composed of the brain and the spinal cord. Its job, basically, the nervous system, is to help us stay alive and keep us safe. We have automatic processes that happen, like breathing, for example, your heart rate, digestion, sexual arousal, and social engagement. Those are things that happen automatically, and they help us survive, basically. So as I was saying, we are designed to survive through protection or connection. The autonomic nervous system helps us do this by detecting cues of safety, danger, or life threats. We're doing this all day long without awareness. Your body is going through, anytime you enter a room, anytime you meet a new person, anytime your body's experiencing something, if you're sick, if your stomach hurts, your body is detecting that information and it's deciding if it's safe or if it's dangerous. So I don't know if you've found yourself, I mean, I'm sure you have, you've found yourself in situations where you start to get nervous and you have no idea why it happens or what's going on with you, and there's no actual threats in front of you, but you start to get really anxious. And that's typically because your nervous system sensed some sort of danger that you might not be aware of. This happens because our nervous system is shaped by every single thing that happens to us growing up, everything. So for example, if you have more experiences with safety overall, an environment where people were responsive to you, people were able to connect with you, wasn't perfect, but you were able to connect overall and you were kept safe, then it's easier for us to connect, to problem solve, and to cope more effectively. Coping, we learn to cope by connecting with other nervous systems. So my nervous system, if it's safe, it can help your nervous system feel better, and vice versa. If your nervous system is safe, it can help mine feel better. So if you have more experiences with lack of safety, danger, or even life threats, then we learn to protect and disconnect. So, the more trauma we have, the more difficult it is to cope with different situations that are presented to us in the present. So what happens is that when we feel afraid or in danger, the body activates the sympathetic nervous system. So this is another branch of the autonomic nervous system. There are two branches attached to that. The autonomic nervous system has the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So the sympathetic nervous system releases adrenaline and cortisol. I'm sure you've heard about this before. This is the fight or flight response. Our heart rate and breathing speeds up. Sugars and fats are released into the bloodstream to increase our energy so we can meet the demands. Pain sensation is blunted and we're preparing for danger. So if we have all this energy in our body and the strength, it helps us either flee the scene, run as fast as we can, or fight to fight off the threat. So this is what's happening to us every time we're sensing some sort of danger. Our brain also changes and makes our thinking rigid, and we just focus on the threat, which makes creative problem solving more difficult. So when we're in this state of mind and body, because it also involves the body, when we're in this state, we have a hard time finding coping solutions and creative problem solving. So it's really hard to sometimes help ourselves get regulated again. We find ourselves in a chronic state of alertness and defensiveness. We have more negative thoughts, which is actually pretty normal, having those negative thoughts when that's happening. We have what's called a negative bias. So, for example, if we go back to the cave days and we think about these two people who are, kind of hanging out, and from afar they see something that could either be a bush or it could be a bear. So this one person who is more maybe optimistic and thinking positively says, okay, maybe that's a berry bush. So maybe I could, hang out and get some lunch. The other person is thinking, nope, that's a bear. That's a bear. And so his system gets activated and, he runs away. Well, guess what? That person who ran away, that's the person who survived because that was actually a bear. So this person who survived passed their genes onto us. So we have a negativity bias. We're used to thinking negatively anytime there's threats. And even in the absence of threats, we think negatively to keep ourselves safe, which is interesting, right? Because then that also makes us feel really anxious when there's no threats. So it's working on training our thoughts, which we'll talk about in a second as well. So we have more negative thoughts. This creates more stress, muscle tension, and less sleep, which then it can create a cycle. Can I ask you for the feedback loop in this example? To share the screen. So we'll just wait a little bit for the feedback loop, but this creates an interesting cycle that happens where you have an event, thank you. You have an event, something happens, whatever it is. Could be anything really. So for example, let's talk about social isolation. So we received the mandates that we're not supposed to leave the house. We're supposed to stay inside to keep ourselves safe. So that's what happened. That's the event. They told us, stay home. Then we started thinking. We started having the thoughts, oh, I'm trapped here. I can't do anything. So if you're thinking, I'm trapped, I can't do anything, what are some feelings you might be having? So here, your sympathetic nervous system is triggered and you start to release adrenaline. So you're thinking things like, you're feeling things like fear. You might be feeling fear. You might be feeling tension in your body, because we're talking about feelings, which are physical sensations and emotions. So the emotion is fear, and the physical sensation is your heart's pounding, you're feeling tense, you're feeling sweaty, and maybe you feel some sort of panic attack coming on. Because your body is feeling this, then you start thinking, oh, there's something wrong with me. I can't breathe now. There's something happening. So as soon as you start to think that, and it goes right back into the feeling. So the feeling intensifies, and really you can't breathe at this point. So this becomes a panic attack. So I just kind of wanted to illustrate what happens to us. We'll keep the feedback loop for now, because the other side of it is, we talked about anxiety. The other side of it is the parasympathetic branch that I was talking to you about earlier. So when your body is sensing life threats, your body activates the parasympathetic system, and this causes the body to shut down. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, breathing slows down to help us conserve energy. This happens when there's no way out and we feel like we're gonna die. For example, if you have a dog in a cage, and it's the first time this dog goes into the cage. Maybe at the beginning, he's, trying to get out, barking and doing something to help himself get out. Hopefully, try to fight the threat off. Once the dog knows that it's not leaving, it's just not leaving, no one's helping, that dog eventually shuts down. Its body just completely reduces the heart rate, the blood pressure, breathing, to help him conserve energy. And hopefully, once the threat passes, if he gets out, he can live again. So this may involve physical and emotional collapse, feelings like depression, numbness, disconnection, dissociation, hopelessness, worthlessness, helplessness, all those things we're feeling when we're feeling depressed. So here the body is sensing some kind of life threat, whether it's real or imagined. So this is the way it goes for that one. Let's say the event is unemployment. A lot of people, through this pandemic have lost their jobs and they're struggling financially right now. So if the event was unemployment, the thoughts could be, I can't provide. As soon as you're thinking that, there's so much that goes, with the thought. I can't provide, lack of resources, what's going to happen to my family, what am I going to do? So you might start to feel, shutting down. Your body's overwhelmed and it can't do anything, so it shuts down. So some things that you might be feeling would be shame, you're feeling disconnected, you're feeling tired. So if you're thinking at this point, because you're feeling that, your body's feeling all those sensations, then it creates a thought of, I'm worthless. So now we're having this thought. And as soon as we have this thought, that also plays into the feelings that we're having. So this is all shaped by trauma, everything we've experienced in life. So for example, if shutdown was the safest place for you when you were going through the trauma, that's what you learned to do. In every situation that can be difficult, shut down. If fight or flight is what was comfortable and what helped you survive whatever situation you were going through, then that's what we do. So we develop an overactive alarm system and we become more sensitive during difficult situations. And I mean, this is important. It kept us safe. We needed that in the moment. It's just now, maybe we don't need it as much. It's like, to kind of give you an extreme example, it's like drug addiction, substance use. If you're using, any substance to help you cope, it was actually helpful in the beginning. It helped numb the feelings. It helped you through stuff until it didn't, until it got to a point where it was debilitating and maybe life stopped, right? So same thing for trauma. It helped. Those behaviors that we engaged in, the shutdown and the fight or flight, they helped until they stopped helping. So just because we went through trauma and difficult situations, it doesn't mean we're doomed. That's the cool thing about this that I absolutely love, that just because we went through that, it doesn't mean we're doomed at all. We just need to help our nervous system be more flexible. And we do this by increasing safety. It's realizing that, I'll give you a personal example. Speaking in front of people, although right now I'm safe at home, speaking in front of people or knowing that I'm speaking to people is difficult for me. So it comes from my own trauma growing up. So what I learned to do there is to come back to the present and realize that right here, right now, I'm safe. And it's something that you can do for yourself as well. So some of the things that happen when we're feeling, when we feel the anxiety and depression, just kind of some signs of stress, anxiety and depression are panic attacks, chest pain, shortness of breath. We might feel irritable, unable to concentrate. We might have sleep and appetite changes. We might startle easily. It's interesting too, because a lot of people are having nightmares or very vivid dreams. This is normal too. I kind of just want to mention that really quickly because it was actually happening to me as well. And I was reading about it, and because we're sleeping more, since we're at home, we might be sleeping a little bit more, and our system, our regular sleep patterns were changed, and we're spending more time in REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, which is where we dream and process whatever happened during the day. So if you're having nightmares and if you're having more vivid dreams, it's kind of part of that as well. Some people may also experience flashbacks, muscle tension, difficult to control worry. You might be feeling keyed up or on edge. This is part of the symptoms of anxiety. And I want to mention that because sometimes we don't realize that this is happening, and it's really coming from there. If we don't know that something is happening, then we can't do anything about it. It kind of just happens to us. Something else that happens, with depression is we're depressed all day. We have depressed mood all day, nearly every day. We might have, some days where we're okay, but for the most part, we're feeling depressed. We might have a lack of interest in things that we used to like. We might not be able to experience pleasure as much. Even funny things might not be as funny. We may sleep too much or too little. We have significant changes in our weight. So either we lose a lot of weight or we gain a lot of weight. We might experience some suicidal thoughts. I want to also talk about this a little bit more because people get really scared when this happens. And of course, it's something to really, really pay attention to. But I also want to say it's normal. We all go through this, you know, negativity bias, right? So negativity bias tells us that, you know, we need to think negatively so we can live. So this is part of it. When we get into the cycles, like the feedback loop, then we start having thoughts of death. And that's normal. It's kind of like a break, if that makes any sense. If we're having a lot of pain, if we're having a lot of difficulty, thinking, okay, what if I'm not here? What if I die? Kind of gives us a little bit of a mental break. A lot of us don't want to die when we go through that. It's just releasing the pain. Of course, if you're going through these things, please talk about it. Talk to someone, reach out for help, because it could get to a point where, you know, it gets worse than just the thoughts. But it's also normal. We might be having feelings of worthlessness. We might be fatigued and have a loss of energy. Again, with depression, we're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So that means that our body is shutting down. And we might also experience an inability to concentrate. So I just want you to kind of notice if those things are happening to you, and be aware. And that's actually the next thing. So we'll have time for questions too. I know I kind of went through it maybe a little bit fast, but we'll have time for questions at the end. But I'd like to get into the strategies for coping. So I was asking you to notice what's happening. And that's one of the most important coping skills we can have. The most important that I talk to everybody I work with. Acknowledge and realize, notice what you're feeling. But let's start with giving yourself permission to just have feelings. We have been socialized now. I don't even know how it happens, when it happens, but we're socialized not to feel. We're socialized not to be sad. You know, oh, don't be sad, you know, cheer up, it's okay. Or no, don't be scared, it's fine. It's fine. Or really, don't be angry. You know, people get upset at us for being angry. But the thing is, we're human beings, and those are all part of our human experience. Sadness, anger, fear, shame, joy, those are our 5 core emotions, actually. Out of those, we have a lot more ways to describe each one, but those are our 5 core, and every single one of those we need, every single one, so we can experience the changes. I mean, change happens all through life. I mean, change is the only thing really that's constant, which is a funny thing, but we experience all these feelings to help us through those changes, and each one of those is important. But along the way, they've told us, don't feel them. They're bad. So now we're having feelings on top of feelings. So for example, if you're feeling sad and they tell you, you know, don't feel sad, then maybe you start to feel angry because you're feeling sad, because you shouldn't feel it. So now you're angry because you're sad. And if you're angry, sometimes you lash out. And if you're lashing out, then you feel guilty because you lashed out. So now you're not just feeling sad, you're also feeling angry and you're feeling guilt. So give yourself permission to feel. This is one of the most difficult things. In the 7 years that I've been a therapist, this is what I've discovered. Everybody goes into therapy because they're having trouble dealing with feelings, which is, again, 100% a human experience. But we don't know what to do with those feelings. So we start by recognizing, which is, again, why it's the most important coping skill. If you don't know what you're feeling, there's nothing you can do about it. And it may take over. So it's so important to feel just what you're feeling. Let me tell you that if you feel whatever you're feeling, if you sit and feel the sadness, you will not die. I can promise you that. Intense feeling usually takes about, 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. So if you sit through that, you will live. I can promise you that you will live. You release the feeling. You don't have to get it stuck in your body. And You don't have the sadness, you don't have the fear, you don't have the guilt. You just release the sadness. So that's one of the most important things. Acknowledge your feelings. Just know they're there and give them the time of day. The other thing that I was talking about earlier is creating safety. If your nervous system has been saturated with experiences of danger, life threat, and lack of safety, then create safety for yourself. We need safety and we need connection. Connection helps create safety. So take the time to think about the things that make you feel safe. Create a list of things that make you feel safe. Is it, for example, creating a routine? A lot of people feel safer when they have a routine established, waking up at the same time, sleeping at the same time, having meals, activities scheduled throughout the day. That typically is very helpful because part of the danger is chaos and change in your normalcy. So a lot of things have changed for us. I imagine, we've been, maybe like a month or 2 months into the quarantine. So maybe by now we have some sort of routine, but if you think back to the beginning, how chaotic was it? How weird was it? So it's just creating some kind of routine, get a planner, have a schedule. And even if you don't want to, if you're not, if you don't have like a rigid way of creating schedules, then get up in the morning and then think about, okay, what do I want to do today? So talking about connection, connection right now is a little difficult because of the, social distancing, which is important to keep ourselves safe and healthy. But there are other things we can do. Connect with people by texting, for example, video chat with people, write letters, call someone, join some social media groups. I've seen a lot of stuff on Facebook and things that are super supportive. Like NAMI, for example, you're reaching out to people and learning stuff that's important for us to help cope. Pets is another thing. If you have your pets, use their support. Especially with dogs, they're designed as well, kind of wired to connect with humans. So their nervous system helps support ours. It helps us regulate. So that's really, really cool. So if you have pets, use them for support. Connect with nature as well. That's also something that helps, like taking a walk, gardening, going outside. Of course, when it's safe to do so. Wear masks, make sure you're safe, but connect with nature. And a lot of people, find it very helpful to also connect with a higher power. So praying, there are services online as well. Connect with your religious organization. So anything you can do to build safety in your life. Again, sit and make a list of everything that makes you feel safe and start incorporating those things into your daily routine. Also, be aware of your physical sensations and know they're just that. So for example, if you're at home and you're feeling safe, but then you're responding to danger, so you might feel a little anxious or you start to feel depressed and your body's kind of deflated, notice that it's happening. Emotions get stuck in the body, so it's so important to pay attention to them and to help us release those emotions. So at the end of the presentation, we're providing a list of coping skills. Everything that I'm talking to you about right now will be listed on a sheet, and I'm including a body scan, and it has a video as well. So I've included some YouTube videos for some of the information I'm providing. I don't know that we'll have enough time to go through the body scan right now, but I have a link for that you can use. So a body scan is something that can help you find out where your emotions are in your body. A lot of us hold emotions in our stomach, our chest, and our throat. So we want to know where they are and what they are. So what you would do there, it takes about maybe 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how thorough it is. But you start from the top of your head and you go all the way to your toes, and you just notice what happens in your body without any judgment. This is the whole point of this too, is don't judge yourself. If you're going through things, it's okay, you're a human being, you're allowed. I think when we start judging ourselves is when we actually have difficulty feeling things. And that's what creates the feelings on top of feelings. So make sure you just notice, pay attention to your body, and don't judge it. Let it happen, let it be. Something that can be very helpful is also meditation. So there are tons of YouTube videos with meditation that you can also search for, and that also helps with physical sensations. Breathing is something that's so helpful, and we forget to do it a lot of times, but we're born with that ability to breathe and to help us release stuff. So one that I really like, I also included a link to a quick video on breathing. And all you do basically is you inhale in through your nose, you hold for a second, and then you exhale out through your mouth. So take 1 quick second right now to do that. So you're gonna inhale in through your nose, hold, and exhale. So let's do it one more time. I'm gonna count, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. This type of breathing really helps to release some of the tension and release some of the energy from fight or flight. So when you're feeling really anxious, breathe. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. If breathing doesn't work, because sometimes our body is so activated that breathing may not work. I teach a lot of breathing exercises in the beginning of therapy, but a lot of people have come back and they say, sometimes it doesn't work. I can't do it. It's not doing anything for me. And that's actually normal. So if breathing doesn't work for you, then move. Anything you can do to release the energy, jumping jacks, if you get up and take a shower, clean the house, do something that requires releasing the adrenaline in your body. So if breathing doesn't work, then move. And that brings me to exercise. 30 to 45 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. And if you can't do that, I mean, at least, 15 minutes every so often to help you get out of shutdown and help you release energy from fight or flight. Exercise helps release endorphins and improves your health. So this is an amazing thing we can do. It helps with any kind of issue we're dealing with and any kind of mental illness as well. So exercise, exercise, exercise. Sometimes we wait for motivation. Oh no, I don't feel like it. One day it'll happen. But motivation comes from movement. So make the choice and move, get up, do something. Even if you're not planning to do it for 30 to 45 minutes, do it for 2 minutes. When you're doing 2 minutes of something, sometimes it motivates you to do more. The next thing is practicing radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is basically, accepting things as they are in the moment, acknowledging that it is happening. Doesn't mean you like it, doesn't mean you agree with the situation. For example, the pandemic right now, I mean, so much is going on. We hear stuff from the government and the news and everything, and sometimes we get really angry about the things that are happening. So we spend so much time being angry that something happened that we miss the reality, which is it is happening. And when we spend all that energy on being angry, we can't focus on a solution. Again, we're angry, it's activating the fight or flight response, and we cannot use creative problem solving. So we're just focused on the unfairness of things, and sometimes we become victims when we're stuck there. We're powerless. So one way to kind of get rid of that is practicing radical acceptance. It's using a statement, for example, that can help you remind yourself where you are and what is happening. So for example, the present, this could be a coping statement. The present is the only moment I have control over, or I can't change what's happened. My favorite, the one I use is, it is what it is right now, even if I don't like it. If I don't agree with it, it is what it is. So that helps me move forward and actually find solutions for what I'm going through. There's actually a link for that as well, and a longer explanation on the handouts that we'll be providing. Gratitude is another one. Gratitude is a natural antidepressant, which is really, really cool. As you're thinking about the things that you're grateful for, you're releasing serotonin and dopamine. Those are the feel-good chemicals, and that's what the antidepressants, all the medications are targeting, serotonin and dopamine. So start a gratitude journal, or even if you don't write it down, think about it every morning, or even when you're feeling, even if you're not doing it every morning or every night, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling anxious, think about the things that you're grateful for. Make a list of things. The other one is using self-talk. We all have a tiny little voice in our heads telling us, you know, good stuff, or a little cheerleader. I call it the adult self. So that adult self can help get you through so much. It's learning to be kind to yourself and being your own cheerleader. For example, before the whole pandemic situation, I was at the gym and I started to have a panic attack. So I knew what it was. So I used recognition. Okay, I'm going through a panic attack. So this is my own voice talking me through it. I'm having a panic attack right now. I can't breathe. So I said to myself, lift your hands, hands behind your head, walk around and breathe. So I started breathing and counting and telling myself I'm gonna be okay and I'm gonna get through it and I'm gonna be able to breathe again. So self-talk is a very, very powerful tool. It can help us stay focused. It can help get us through so many things. And this includes affirmations. I'm sure you've heard of those. So affirmations are positive statements you can tell yourself to help you feel better. This is something that can combat negativity bias. When we're having those negative thoughts, use your self-talk. You can say things like, I am okay right now. I am safe. I can handle it. I'm worthy. Positive statements that you need to hear, that if somebody else told you, you'd be like, yes, this is amazing. I'm so glad you said that. You can do that for yourself as well. This brings me also to self-compassion. This is one of the most difficult things in therapy and one of the most important too. Self-compassion. So self-compassion is something that helps reduce shame. When we're going through so many things and we get stuck in self-sabotage and doing negative things that are just causing us harm, self-compassion is something that can combat those feelings. So something that I use all the time, and it's a quick little question. What would you tell someone you love if they were in that situation? If they were going through something very difficult where you're telling yourself, I'm so stupid and I can't believe I did that. You're saying those words to yourself, but what would you say to someone you love if they did the same thing? You would probably be very supportive and very kind. So anytime you're struggling, ask yourself, what would I say to someone I love? This helps you connect with yourself as well, and it brings safety to your system. Stay in the present is the next one. I know we're getting close to the time, so I'll try to hurry. But stay in the present is another thing that's very important. If we're in the past, we tend to be depressed. If we're stuck there, we can't change it. It's done. It happened. So if we're in the past, we're going to be depressed. If you're in the future, then you're typically very anxious. What if this, what if that? So the best place to be is in the present. So one quick thing that you can do to help remind yourself that you're in the present and help yourself become grounded is using your 5 senses. So you can place your feet on the ground and just notice how they feel touching the ground. Even if they're in your shoes, just kind of notice your feet touching the ground. And then start to look around. So I'm gonna ask you to actually do that for a second. Look around in the room and notice 5 things you can see. Start counting. 5 things you can see in the room. Once you're done noticing the 5 things, then look for 4 things that your body is touching. Could be your clothes, could be the mouse, the computer, your phone. What is your body touching right now? Now, notice maybe 3 things that you can hear. Air conditioning, my voice right now, somebody else talking, pets. 2 things you can smell. And then maybe just notice the taste in your mouth. This is a really, really quick thing we can do to help us become grounded, to help us return to where we are. Because what happens is that, especially when we're anxious, we tend to just float. We're just floating around in our mind, and that creates a lot more anxiety. So come back to the present. You're here right now, and nothing's happening to you right this moment. So super important. And then the other thing, this gets into CBT, and maybe you've heard of that. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. Can I get the last cycle for you, please? The ABC model.
You know, Gabby, this is Letitia. Just to mitigate any risk that we might run into, we're going to choose not to share screens for the rest of your presentation, just to keep it as safe as possible. I apologize for that.
No worries. No worries at all. So I'll do my best to illustrate it, describing it. So CBT basically tells you that how you think, you feel, and act. So let that sink in for a second. How you think, you feel, and act. So that means that your feelings and behaviors are influenced by your thoughts. So for example, if you have any event, anything that triggers whatever experience you go through. So for example, if you're at home again, if you're having to be at home and you can't do anything, right? So that's the event. What happens is that you have to stay at home. Then you start thinking, right? Again, we have the thoughts, and it's, I can't handle it. I can't do this. So then the feelings that you have are, you might be feeling fear, you might be feeling anger, you might be frustrated, you might be annoyed and just very irritable. So when you're feeling that way, what you do is maybe you start to pick fights. Maybe you start to isolate. Maybe you start to yell at everybody at the house. And when you're yelling and acting that way, then you're thinking, see, I can't handle it. Look at me. Look at what I'm doing. And then you might also think things like, I'm terrible. I'm a horrible person, horrible parent. I can't believe I'm doing all these things. So then that creates more feelings, and then that creates more negative behaviors. So what we want to do with that is look at your thoughts. Pay attention to what you're thinking. We do something called the catch it, check it, change it. So you catch your thoughts is the first thing. What negative things are you thinking about yourself or the situation? So once you catch it, once you know what it is, then you check it. Is this thought true? Is it 100% true? Some thoughts might be true. So for example, if I'm thinking, I hate my job, that might be that's the reality of things. I hate my job. But then we train ourselves to look at the positive side. Okay, so what is that job doing for you? Well, it's putting food on the table. It's giving you shelter. It's giving you everything you need right now financially, right? So we look at the positive side of things to help us through. So that's where you also change it. What is the reality? So if you were asking yourself, is the thought true? Is it 100% true? And the answer is no. What's the reality? So for example, you're telling yourself, I can't handle it. Is it true? Is it true you can't? I mean, so far you have, right? So the reality is that you can handle that, and maybe you can handle more. Because look at the past and everything you've experienced, and you did that. You made it through. So can you handle it? Heck yes, you can handle it. So it's looking at catching the thoughts, checking it to make sure it's the reality, and then changing it to what really is true. Then it's looking at, to come to the end, it's looking for help. Ask for help. If you're struggling, ask for what you need, right? Especially at home with your partners and family. We're not mind readers. So we don't know unless you tell us. So ask for help when you need it. Reach out to a mental health professional, for example, if you're having trouble handling it on your own, which happens. I mean, if I could send everybody to therapy, I totally 100% would. I think it's very, very helpful. And now especially we're doing a lot of appointments via Zoom, and I think a lot of clinics are doing that. I'm having appointments via Zoom or phone. So it might be even easier to just, get a hold of somebody. And I didn't mention distraction as a coping skill. It is one. I didn't mention it, but it's important. I mean, it's important to do some of it as well when we're having a lot of emotion that's really intense. But go back to the emotion. Let's say that you're having a lot of anger and you're struggling and you're feeling hurt, and then you go distract yourself, doing something different, and you never come back to it, then you're not dealing with the situation. So use distraction, yes, but then come back to the feelings and deal with those feelings. So that's it as far as the coping skills. They'll be posted in a handout, so you can have them, and they'll be easily accessible. And I guess we can open it up to questions. Thank you so much for listening.
Gaby, that was an amazing presentation. Like I said, you have a way of making it very relatable, very easy to understand, and I could definitely see myself in a lot of those kind of negative things, and I can also see some of the things that I'm trying to keep myself healthy. So that was very helpful. So do we have any questions out there? I see that we have one question from one of the participants that says, is there a way to break the feedback loop when you are in the middle of a panic?
Yes, I mean, there are several things you can do. It starts with the realization, and then you can use a lot of the things that will be listed on the handout. But for example, start walking around, start breathing, start doing something to help you release the energy, and remind yourself that you are actually safe right now. Start looking around and notice that in this moment, right this minute, you're okay. And that it's just a panic attack. So if your body is responding that way, you're feeling butterflies in your stomach, you can't breathe, you are lightheaded, you're sweating, you're shaking, that is actually a good thing. Sounds crazy, but that's actually a good thing. That's your body responding exactly how it needs to in that type of situation. What we need to do is retrain our mind. Our body is doing exactly what you're asking it to do. But yes, it's definitely noticing what you're going through and releasing the energy. Start moving around, do something, and remind yourself it's a panic attack and you will get through it. You will survive. It's using a lot of the skills on the handout.
Okay.
I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I've been texting with people in my peer support group, and one lady said she's starting to feel normal because now she's not the only one in her family that's anxious.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it's happening to a lot of people. They're going through so much.
But thank you for the stuff you talked about. I've been through the DBT, and you just reminded me I need to go back and review.
Yeah, it's very helpful, and we forget about it. That's why I wanted to do the handouts, because you know, especially because I'm going through it so fast, but we forget about those things. So having it handy is really important. So thank you.
Okay, we're right about the 7:30 mark. I'm just going to do one more call out for questions if anybody has any. Let me give you a little chance to respond. Okay, well, everything that Gabby presented today in terms of handouts will be sent out. The link will be posted. We will obviously need to do some editing to this video, but I believe we can, so that we can make it a useful video that is appropriate for everybody to see. And Gabby, thank you so much for your expertise, for your time, and for all of the knowledge that you brought to the group today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited first time, and I survived.
You did.
Thank you. You did great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a good one. Be safe out there.
All right. I will ask that Marissa and Julia please stay in the meeting. Thank you, everyone.